History lesson. History lesson. Let's start with that first and foremost. This time last year, Barcelona were crowning themselves as league champs with 4 games to go. A team that looked more solid than the rest, and they deservedly won La Liga. So fast forward a year, almost to the date, and Real Madrid crowned themselves league champs with 4 games to go. Best team around, only lost 1 match. Only team to beat Girona in Montilivi this year. So it's not only that, but it's been, and we can talk a bit about Real Madrid. I'm not going to delve into it too much because when Real Madrid played, I happened to be on air with a Premier League work. But it was a labored affair for Real Madrid to get things started. Of course, it ends up really breaking through in the second half and really cruising to a 3-0 victory against Cádiz. It was a foregone conclusion. I had even said on Sportsmax yesterday, of course, today being Saturday, I said yesterday on Sportsmax that Real Madrid should look to prioritize the match midweek. Because, yeah, okay, fine, it's great. If they win the title this week, it's nice, but they still have another week to win it. And of course, the priority for them is to go and win against Bayern Munich midweek in Champions League. They kind of do that because if you look at the starting lineup, well, there were a lot of new faces, or not new faces, but alternatives for Carlo Ancelotti. And then, of course, that ends up being Jude Bellingham that scores a second goal as soon as he comes in. Yeah, okay, fine. And then they do cruise to a 3-0 victory. Let's give them that. So, that is set. Real Madrid do their part, and Barcelona have to go and do theirs. Or should I say Girona had to do theirs, because Girona had a purpose. Girona knew that if they won, they would leapfrog over Barcelona. Now, it ends up being funny because it's not just the win. It's not just the 3 points and Real Madrid end up winning the league title. It's also that Girona leapfrog Barcelona, and now Girona would end up taking their place in the Spanish Super Cup, which means about 8 million euros less for Barcelona next year, should this, of course, remain. And of course, now you do have Girona that will look to make that run to try and preserve second place. In order to have that, of course, Champions League has already been clinched. Everything is pretty much locked for Michel's side going forward. They struggled, Girona, in the first 15 minutes. 15, maybe I'll say 20, but 15 minutes more or less. They struggled because Barcelona were going, and they were really working in those first 15 minutes up to the 60th minute. Girona, luckily, weren't down by more. Of course, Lewandowski was able to score. Barcelona they're able to take advantage 2-1 at a certain junction in the match. But it could have been worse. I mean, Gundogan missed one. I think Rafinha missed another one. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head some of the opportunities that were missed early on in the match. But, Barca could have scored easily 3, maybe 4 in those first 15, 20 minutes. Girona struggled, but as that 15 minutes went into 20 and into 25, you saw them settle down a little bit more. But it still wasn't enough to really break down Barcelona. And this has been the story for Barca so far this year. A team that has struggled, but a team that when they're flying, they're flying. Big stat. Last 4 games, Barcelona have conceded 13 goals. So the Barca of the beginning of the season ends up returning at the end of the season, and that's why the league ends up slipping away rather easily. Because, of course, we have to look at the Clásico, how it would have ended if things would have gone their way. And being basically in the fight up to now, basically that was the match. That kind of killed it off. Obviously, this one ends up just making it pen to paper. But it's a team that defensively struggles. I mean, they had 4 scored on them by PSG. Obviously, the 3 against Real Madrid, the 2 against Valencia, and then, of course, the 4 today. So there's some major struggles at Barcelona, and that's where things need to change in terms of what's going on. Obviously, you hear that Pedri's probably leaving, or he's on the transfer. He's transferable, so he might not be the only one that's leaving, because we saw some players that kind of lost the plot as the game progressed, and in the 60th minute, the whole myth is being debunked of of the player that has to be the man of the match playing the entire game. Porto comes in, and all of a sudden Girona have a different look. But of course, Barca had a lot to do with it. Sergio Roberto comes in, he replaces Rafinha, and the pass that he sends back over to Dovbyk, and everything that ends up being that domino effect in the span of 11 minutes sees Barca up 2-1, and then all of a sudden losing 4-2. That's where you have all these issues going on with Barcelona, because they just broke down. It was a team that just couldn't put up a fight. It was a team that when one chip fell, then came the other, it was just this domino effect of calamities that were going on defensively, offensively, midfield. Everything just kind of seemed to be falling apart. Even towards the end, you could have made an argument that Girona could have had 2 more. It could have been 6-2. If not for it was Koundé that clears one off the line. Marc-André ter Stegen ends up making a save there towards the very end of the match. Obviously, the match was done by that point, but Girona wanted to keep going. They wanted to keep pounding forward. They wanted to kill off the match, essentially, and finish as strongly as possible. But Barcelona struggled. Barcelona, and I know I said that about Girona earlier, but then, after that, there was really no answer. It's a team that looked dispirited, a team that looked lacking in desire to keep going. There were a lot of things wrong. And again, I mentioned, and I'll keep saying this on Sportsmax, where at times you look at the bench if you're a Barcelona player, and the only thing you see is Xavi arguing, Xavi fighting, Xavi yelling, Xavi screaming, and then towards the end of the match, he goes, yeah, we lost all 4 matches against the teams that are above, but we're still better than them. Coach me up on that one. Leave some comments in regards to that, because I'm confused. You lost all 4 matches against Girona and against Real Madrid, yet you were the better team. Coach me up. That's the problem with Xavi. You as a player see him, and that's what's going on. It doesn't give you any assurance or any confidence that this will pass. This too shall pass. We will be fine. Let's just go through the storm. We'll survive it, and we'll progress through. Don't worry. You don't have that serenity with Xavi. Xavi, basically, as a coach, now, I guess it was 17, 18, 19-year career as a player. I think he had something like 88 yellow cards. Now, as a coach, he's had over 1/4 of that in 1.5 years. He needs to calm down. He needs to settle down. He needs to show. The poise isn't just shown in the middle of the pitch when you bring the ball down and you're looking and you're surveying and you're trying to send the ball and keep the ball in motion. The poise also comes as a coach, holding on, analyzing, being cold about what's going on, you making sure that the team knows that everything is under control, because at times it seems like it isn't. And when Xavi goes out of control, so does the team, because there's a need for direction, and the direction's not there. The direction ends up being, ask a nervous person directions. That tends to be Xavi at times, and we saw it in the match against PSG. We saw it against Real Madrid when he kind of loses the plot a little bit. No, let's not just go and talk about Xavi because it's his fault. In part, it's not his fault. At a certain point, the players have to have the finger pointed at them. So let's not just go and start saying, oh, it's this and no. The players do deserve some blame, because at a certain point, the coach can only do so much. The coach can't go and make the pass. The coach can't go and make the right decision for the players. The coach can't go and drop the players back himself. The players have to do all that. Okay, so in Girona's first goal, Ronald Araujo had a lot to do with it. Obviously, Sergio Roberto has a great deal to do with the second goal and everything that came after that, where Barca just found themselves in disarray and couldn't really get themselves together. Errant passes that ended up leading to transitions. Now, that's another thing. It's not just the teams that are above the table that were able to dominate Barcelona or handle Barcelona or control Barcelona or even compete with Barcelona. It was the teams that transition better end up putting Barcelona on their back foot, end up having a team that has issues dropping back, has issues keeping up, has issues reassessing the spots where they need to be and how they drop back collectively and who marks who and who goes where and who attacks where. Those little details are seen, because Girona, after the 60th minute, when Porto comes on, of course, Porto comes in, scores twice, gets an assist. ends up changing the game, putting it upside down because it was unrecognizable. I mean, if you would have tuned in at that moment, you would have thought that Girona was just steamrolling over Barcelona for the entire match when they had only done it for a span of 7 minutes, 8 minutes at most. But it was all they needed, and then of course after that they just put their foot on their throat and just kind of had them gasp away. It's been telling. It's been worrying. Now, yeah, they did have a good run of form in recent weeks prior to the match against PSG, the return leg, I should say. But there's a lot of things that Barca need to correct if they're going to try and compete next year forget Champions League, in La Liga. Because you can't be double digits and expect to compete next year. You have to find ways to kind of cut the distance or cut the difference between you and Real Madrid, and now even Girona. Of course, that ends up being the big issue when it comes to Xavi's side going into next year. Girona, we have to talk about them too. A team that understood the changes that they need to, because of course, as the match progressed, or we'll talk during the first 60 minutes because everything else we've already delved into when it came to Barcelona, what they weren't able to do, but then there's credit that needs to be given to Girona on taking advantage of those moments. Michela's side couldn't find the opposing goal consistently. Yeah, it was 2-1 at one point, but Barcelona were doing a good job of compressing the middle, really constricting passing lanes in the middle, preventing Girona from moving around. They had to go out wide, but they really didn't have that continuity because they were being held. They were checked by Barcelona for a good amount of time. And Barcelona, of course, moving the ball around and how they usually play causes you a lot of problems, especially when you're defending. And not only when you're defending, it's when you recover the ball and you only recover the ball for a limited amount of time. That's the big problem that Girona were having. But eventually, as time went by, they're kind of figuring things out. They're kind of opening up spaces. Therefore, opening up spaces in the middle for Barcelona to have to defend or being lured out, if you want to call it that. That's where you see all these issues coming up with Barcelona. But it's no longer blaming Barcelona. Now it's looking to give Girona some credit because they were able to do that. And not only that, they were able to compress and push and converge and engage a little bit higher up the pitch, forcing the mistakes that led to the transitions that eventually led to the goals. Obviously, the finishing didn't harm the cause either. So all of that has to be looked at, has to be delved into for Girona going into next year. Now, their objective is Champions League is already set. They already beat Barcelona not once but twice. They also are looking to defend that second place because, as I mentioned before, it brings you a lot more money going into next year. And then you're going to need more money depending on where Savinho ends up going, if Jan Couto ends up staying. If all these parts have to be, if the loan spells end up being extended or even purchased, what ends up happening there? So the transfer market will dictate a lot of where Girona is going to go. They're going to have to spend money in the transfer window. When you add more matches going into an upcoming season, you can't stay with the same short base. You have to have a much more expanded, a deeper squad that can handle the rotations and can handle the excruciating calendar that is going to be La Liga, Copa del Rey, Super Cup if they end up getting there, and more importantly, Champions League. So they're going to be in 4 different competitions, so they do need to expand on their roster and expand on it as quickly as possible, maybe as soon as the season is done. So big win for Girona. Real Madrid champions, congratulations to them. They were the most consistent side in La Liga. And Barcelona, well, we're going to have to wait and see how things end up, whether in second or third, in what is going to be an extremely, extremely disappointing season. When Xavi left, now Xavi's come back, and now many are thinking, should he stay? What do you think? Let me know. Guys, talk to you soon.